straight online, then thank you.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the March meeting. It's 1 minute to 6, but we'll start just a little early.
No, it's 6 on the dot.
Right, 6 on the dot. There you go. Finally we feel a little warmth in the air. Tim Roth still talking? Morning.
I was talking to Frank. Frank's giving them questions.
Don't make me start turning out the lights. We will proceed with approval of the February 28th meeting minutes. Did any? Go ahead.
Move approval.
Second.
I will be abstaining from this vote as I was ill and not here, so it has been moved and seconded that we approve the February 28th annual meeting board minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Treasurer's report, Mr. B.
February financial highlights, we had an income of $11,900. Most of those are from sublease and access fees. Matter of fact, all of it but $50 from a fishing tournament. Expenses was $17,484. I did call the office today to talk to Alex about getting some sort of form so that we could see when we talk about sublease and access fees, that's commercial, surplus parcel, sublease permit fees.
Yes.
That's
yeah. Just the subleases.
resident fees. That's also sands and sands fee, pops docs fees, things
Yeah,
like
they're,
that.
they're all the resident sublease except for sands and pops and docks. Those are the only two commercial fees.
Well, we have the yacht club and then we have the marina.
Those are marina club fees.
Yeah, they're
But
separate.
That's,
They would go 40/20.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The yacht club and stuff, that's marina club fees.
Okay, and somebody did pay that, $500. Okay.
Yeah.
I just was wondering if we could get a spreadsheet for us to see how those are coming in, what district the subleases are leasing from, just to provide us some data. And I open it up to the board just to see if to try to get better accounting is what that is
Yeah,
my
if you
goal.
want, I can definitely print you out something and send you something with the amount of sublease that we have and what's been paid.
That'd be great. That'd be great. For the month February, obviously a loss of income, $5,584. It is just February, and I've lost my place. So everyone had a chance to look at the report of claims. So I would entertain a motion to approve the report of claims for February 2019.
I'll make that motion, Mike.
I had one question, and I just wondered, I should have asked you, this Staples credit plan, is that just a payment on a computer or something like that, or a printer?
That's just our Staples credit cards. That was a new
Okay.
printer that we actually bought
Oh,
for the
okay,
office.
okay. I didn't think we financed anything.
No,
Okay,
no.
I'm
We just
good.
have a credit card through them that we pay monthly.
Okay.
And then I have a question too. I just saw it says Visa, and there's like 887 or something. Is that, was that just something we bought on Visa, or?
That was a mixture of dredging supplies, buildings and grounds, grass, and meals. So that was the Four Winds visit when we went to check out the Four Winds,
Yeah.
vacuum and cleaning supplies for the office. I actually got a battery charger
on
and
the
jump
next-
pack for the equipment for dredging
It's on the next
supplies.
page.
The detail is on the top of the very next page.
Oh,
Do
okay.
you see
Yeah.
it?
I didn't.
yeah, it's split.
Yeah, it's all broken out there.
Okay.
All
Any
right.
other questions? Any other discussion?
I'll second Pam's motion.
Okay. Motion's been made. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving financials for February, they signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is our cumulative maintenance fund increase. When Adam sent the proposed agenda, we have a deadline if we want to increase our cumulative maintenance fund from $5,000 to whatever. And that deadline is April 1st to be put into our DLGF and State Board of Accounts gateway system. I just brought it up for discussion because regardless if we put it in gateway, we can always take it back out. But if the financial committee wants to increase cumulative maintenance fund. The deadline for that is April 1st. So this meeting, we would either, need, and I'd open it for discussion. I would almost increase it $2,500 just to have the increase. The significant amount of tax is hardly nothing because it doesn't affect our revenue or expenses. It's a separate tax.
What are you saying? You would transfer it out of what account and throw it
No,
there?
I'm just wanting to increase our cumulative maintenance fund, which is.
Which is $101,912.40.
Right.
Yeah, we budgeted 5,000 per year to add.
Almost every year, and it's been like that. We've been coming to these meetings since 2006, and I think it's always been $5,000.
Yeah, I think so.
It's account number 6610, and
I see it.
again, we can put it in there and not use it and take it back out, but again, if we don't put it in by April 1st, then we kind of miss out this year.
You just need the approval.
I would never do
Positive.
anything without approval of the board to increase a fund in Gateway without your approval. So that's
You're
why.
proposing 7,500?
I would propose some kind of increase, and then, when we get that, we always put that back into a CD when we.
Yeah, at the end of every year, we'll put 5,000 into a CD for the cumulative maintenance.
Well, I don't personally have a problem doing that, but I think that all of our reserves need to be looked at, and evaluated. So to me, it's kind of an arbitrary, do it because we did it last year, but I think it needs to be like further evaluated down the road on looking at what maintenance we have coming up, depreciation of our equipment, a lot of that kind of stuff.
And when we actually met, I'll get into this a little bit later on, but when we met with Umball the other day, they were talking about the continuous, so we're allowed to have 2 additional funds besides our general fund, which is our cumulative maintenance fund and a continuous improvement fund. And that's another one that we can add monies into and then pull it out as a reserve if we have some type of big of expense. So I would recommend too that we look into maybe adding a third type of fund for that continuous improvement fund as well.
And those are not taxed the same as our conservancy tax. That needs to be, and I'll find out what that tax
What do
is.
you mean
tax, yeah.
taxed?
Well, when we raise our budget, for example, when we raised our budget $67,000 to pay the loan, that affected the tax rate. The cumulative maintenance fund is a completely different tax. For example, let's say your fire fund is .003 of $100 assessed valuation. So it's a completely different tax from the DLGF or the State Board of Accounts. I'll find out what that is, but at this particular meeting, I'm only asking for approval from the board to increase it from 5,000 to 7,500. Again, it's.
But we budgeted 5,000.
Well, we have for 2019, this would be for 2020.
And I don't think that.
Do we have to do that now?
But we
That
have
is
to have-
correct.
But we have to do it by
hold
April
the
1st.
That is
placeholder
correct.
by year
We're
one.
gonna do it
That
this
is
year.
correct.
I got you.
And that comes out of
Yeah.
our general fund. We budget to take money out of our general fund, so our general revenues to transfer into that at the end of the year. So I'm not positive about the tax issue, but yeah, we do budget that every
Kind
year
of a
to transfer
no-brainer.
over.
Again, yeah, we can put it in there if the finance committee, when they meet to approve the budget with this, which this board will approve, at the end of, in October, or, yeah, somewhere near there. If you approve the 7,500, then it sticks. If you don't approve the 7,500,
But you
it
can't
doesn't
raise it.
stick. Right.
But you can't raise it
But
without
I
this.
cannot raise it.
I don't see why we wouldn't add the 2,500
Okay. Is that
for
the
2020.
Does
consensus?
that mean that next year, when we look at our budget, we're gonna have $7,500 in that line?
If you
item?
approve it in October,
Right.
If
you-
it goes into the budget.
So this just
And it's-
sets the
it's just
maximum
weird.
allocation.
that is correct.
Yeah.
Well, again, to me, it sounds really arbitrary. I don't think I know enough to say raise it, That's all I'm saying.
Stop me, because I don't know what I don't know here, but it sounds to me like maintenance costs could increase, and we wouldn't have, if we only had $5,000 in that line, then we would have to get it from someplace else.
Right.
No,
And-
there's 101,000 in that
Well,
account.
no, I get that. I'm sorry, wrong way to say it. But having the additional $2,500, if other expense goes up, we've got a little cushion then. Is that your reason for wanting to do it?
Well, basically, your cum fund is for capital expenditures, like vehicles, structures, things like that. Some equipment can be a capital expenditure out of your CUME fund. It's very specific on how the accountant takes money out of your CUME fund. It's not like a general expense fund. It's a cumulative maintenance fund. That's what they. So it's for capital expenditures, and so every year we take that 5,000 out of 6610, and we put it in that CD. And we've been doing it for the last 13 years that I know of.
At the same rate.
At the same rate. And so all I'm saying is, and Adam always reminds me, and he's very good at it, hey, you might want to go on the gateway and take care of this. Well, every time I go on there, I get a report, oh, if you're going to raise your cumulative fund, it's due April 1st. So I would be remiss not bringing it to this meeting and saying,
No.
do you want to raise the cumulative fund? Because it's due, I have to enter it in Gateway before April 1st.
But at least
Lance,
gives us
do you
the
have
option.
anything? Does it hurt when you bite your tongue that hard?
No, I think, the cumulative maintenance fund, like you mentioned, is kind of the rainy day fund that you're storing monies away. You could have major repairs such as a dam, spillway, et cetera, that you can pull it from. I think, the taxation is a separate issue because we just have the one account, the general fund. And so, the tax rate's gonna vary based on what we need to fulfill the budget of what we propose. So you're basically planning ahead now. And then I think, as we mentioned, when we get closer, they'll come around and figure out what, we need that tax levy line.
Yeah, we are not approving the cumulative maintenance fund increase tonight. You're giving me permission to enter it into the State
And
Board
then
of
it would
Accounts.
be in the budget for 2020.
It would be in there for our discussion
Right.
Okay.
for the 2020 budget.
I think we could potentially raise it. I don't see an issue with it.
Can we raise it if we want to from the 7,500?
No, the
Yeah.
deadline is April 1st.
No. Could we?
Can you
are
go,
asking,
she's asking,
can we-
could you go
can we
more
raise
if
it
you
more?
ask?
We can raise it whatever you want me to raise it to. I'm just recommending 2,500. If you want to raise it 5,000, that would be,
Could we decide that later, I think is what she's asking. If we
I
get
think
into-
they want to know what the increase is
Okay.
April 1st.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So why 2,500?
It's half the 5,000. It's just something to increase to, I've been a fireman for 34 years. And when I first got on the job, a fire engine was $100,000. You know what a fire engine costs today? $600,000. So, everything is going up.
Right.
If the dam broke 10 years from now, what's it going to cost for replacement? What's it going to cost to replace the dam this year? I think that it's just smart to take a look at maybe increasing our CUME fund, and then come October, when we have the first and the second and the third reading of the budget, if we decide to leave it in there, we leave it in there. But if I don't report it on April 1st, we can't increase it.
Mike,
I'm not, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, make just a comment. What he's getting at is the way the state works, and it was backwards for me. Basically, once you set the budget, that's your top line. And so that does get locked in, and the only way that you could increase it thereafter is go to an additional appropriation and meetings and such. Even if you increase it, doesn't mean that you have to spend it, but you're kind of setting what your top line budget's gonna be, in that regards. And then as our budget works, we have the one general account, and so if we need to reallocate monies within those various line items at the end of the year, we can do that, but yeah, you just kind of need to get an idea of what your top line is.
And I should have brought it to you sooner, but the deadline just appeared when I did our debt management report that we've never had to report on, but I had to do that last week.
Michael, did you have
Well,
a comment too?
I'm not involved in these components of things. That's the fiscal agent for the city does those. So this is not something I'm intimately familiar with. What Mike is talking about as far as when you are entering in things into the state, I know that sort of serves as the max. You can always go underneath it. So that is consistent with, what Mike is saying is consistent with what I've always understood as well. One of the things that I think would be helpful for the board ultimately long-term is being able to understand some of these critical deadlines so that we can all proactively plan and be aware of them.
Sure.
One of the things that also I think, and Mike, I absolutely agree that the capital expenses, nothing is getting cheaper. And if we've been setting aside 5,000 for our capital, our cumulative maintenance fund, and have never increased it, that's probably not going to keep up with our long-term needs. However, it's a think, I don't know that.
We're way behind.
Yeah, what we ultimately need to do is really do a good assessment of our capital assets and understand, where they are in the life cycle, how much we can anticipate when they're at the end of the life cycle or when they're needing major capital upgrades, so that our budgets are aligned accordingly and stuff. So,
And I think UMBA from our initial meeting, that's why I'm asking a lot of these questions, because, we just haven't budgeted for capital or anything. We have a lot of deferred maintenance and, so, they will come back, I think, and give us
Some of
good
that info.
information.
Yeah, they're
to
running
look
different
at.
scenarios, one being with the depreciation of equipment, potential replacement coming up versus other types of finance dredging. I don't see an issue with raising that. I mean, we can, once we get to the budget cycle, we can always do that, or we can keep it at 5.
Seems like a placeholder, kind of a no-brainer. to
It's
me.
like Lance said, it's backwards. They're asking you
Yeah.
to do something on a certain deadline, and it's, and,
coincides with
Doesn't
any of the other.
coincide.
right, so, but, we can make it 10,000. Again, we're not spending the money yet, we're not allocating the money yet.
Right. So
We're
you-
not,
Do you need a motion to?
I would like approval from the board to put that into Gateway, yes. Yes, I would like that. So I would entertain a motion to notify the DLGF that we're going to raise our cumulative fund $7,500?
Instead of,
Or
Two 7,500.
to 7,500, increase it by 2,500.
I'll make that motion.
I made the motion.
Second.
You'll
Okay.
second the motion. All right, it has been moved and seconded that we increase the cumulative maintenance line to $7,500 as opposed to $5,000, and report that to the DLGF. Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
That's all I have, thank you.
All right. Managers report?
No, well,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Let's go ahead
Did you
and-
want, can we do Lance now?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you wanted to put him,
Sorry.
that's perfect. So he can get home to his babies.
Okay, thanks, everyone. I knew there was some questions that came about regarding the pollution liability quote that we gave, so we tried to kind of put it in a synopsis form that hopefully makes it a little bit easier to kind of go through. But as mentioned, a lot of times when we sit down and do, reviews and stuff with Adam,
thank you.
is, not only to kind of go through what type of coverages we have and whatnot, but I think it's also just important to kind of explain what's not covered, through the standard insurance policy, just to kind of make everybody aware. And one of the common exclusions that you're going to get on any type of insurance policy is as it relates to pollution. So any type of remediation work, any type of monitoring, anything that results out of a pollution type of event, basically is a common exclusion with any insurance policy out there. And so one of the things that we're getting into with Lake Lemon, especially with a lot of the conversations going on in regards to dredging, again, the pollution exposure kind of increases as you start to get into that, more and more. Because certainly there's a lot of different types of exposures that you could get into, release pollutants into the water or into the land. And the Conservancy could ultimately have responsibility for cleanup and remediation, of that type of event. So we were able to go out and, get a pollution, what they call a contractor pollution liability quote. And it actually has kind of several different silos, of coverage that we deal with, so I could go through those fairly quickly. And the first is the main one, is what they call the contractor's pollution liability. And really, that's any kind of pollution event that's caused really out of your operations, i.e., the dredging more than likely. And so it could be several things. Obviously, when you go out onto the water, on the barge, you're taking a lot of contaminants out there with you in terms of fuel and hydraulics. So if you would have an event that would leak into the lake, and you have to do, remediation work, that could trigger coverage under this policy as well. And the other thing to kind of think of is that you're out there, especially dredging, you're kind of digging blind. If you really think about it, you're putting the scoop down in the water, you don't know what you're getting into. And let's just say probably back in the 50s and 60s when the lake was originally built, I don't think the regulations were quite the same as they are today. So who knows what might still be down there that we don't know about. So the other part could be, you know, if they're digging, strike a tank or something like that that we were unaware of that, you know, got buried under the water and released pollutants, it would also cover it from that event. So that falls like kind of under the contractor's pollution, and that, you know, basically carries, you know, the $2,500, you know, deductible if we would have that event. So basically the Conservancy would pay the first $2,500, insurance would kick in and pay up to $1 million, you know, per occurrence on that, and then they do have an aggregate amount. Second page of it talks about what they call, you know, non-owned disposal site liability endorsement. It's an additional endorsement that's basically put onto the policy, and best way I could classify that is i.e. positrot. So again, we have done testing, you know, to certainly make sure that the sediment that we, you know, put there is clean, but for whatever reason, if something happens and it does become contaminated, and we do have to do remediation work on it, that's really what this endorsement is for. So it would kick in coverage, you know, provide up to, you know, $1 million in that case. In that case, that falls under a different deductible as well, so that's a $10,000 deductible on that, so the Conservancy would have the first 10 of that cleanup, and then the insurance would kick in, you know, up to $1 million LC. Last, just, you know, the next endorsement is just kind of more of them information. They do have supplementary payments included, and they can actually do that under a separate endorsement, so it doesn't kind of work into, your liability limits. So any type of payments or work that they have to do in researching the claim, you know, posting bonds, things of that nature, they basically designated a completely separate limit for that of $1 million, so you don't exhaust your, you know, liability limits on that. The next part of it, the third part, is the pollution liability endorsement for transportation. I think we've had a little bit of that going on through third-party contractors right now, and basically that's basically when you ship the contaminants on the roadway. So if we're moving sediment around, transporting it from point A to point B, and something would occur in between, basically this coverage would kick in, and that again would be the $1 million. It does. This one falls form, you know, with basically the contractor's pollution, so it's a $2,500 deductible on that one. Next one doesn't really apply probably in the case of the Conservancy, but they do throw it in as part of the overall package, but they do have coverage for mold. Who would ever cause that, but most of the work's outside, so I don't know if I foresee that being a problem, but they do provide some coverage for that if you have a mold exposure. And the last one is basically what they call catastrophe management. For lack of a better word, that's probably public relations. If you would have an event and such, and as we've seen in social media, today, how quickly that stuff takes off and gets twisted around. Basically, this is kind of the PR, coverage that provides up to $250,000 of coverage to do whatever we can. I mean, obviously, we're going to remediate the expense over here, but obviously, we have to kind of try to keep the public relations damage down and do what we can there, and that's what that really coverage is there to do, to help kind of manage through that expense, what steps to take, what to say, what not to say, et cetera, how to handle the press if there is a major pollution event, et cetera. So as mentioned, that's up to $250,000 of coverage, but that does have a $25,000 deductible. So the Conservancy would have the first $25,000 of that type of plan. So with that, we'd be open to any other general questions.
So on that first one, this is probably just a basic insurance question, but what does it mean with general aggregate? That's $2 million, and then the other one's the $1 million.
Yeah, basically in insurance, they give you what they call an occurrence limit, so that's just one event. So, again, let's say the excavator is out and have, leaks diesel fuel into it. they would consider that one occurrence and provide up to $1 million for that one particular event. The $2 million is over the policy aggregate, so, you know, if you have multiple events, they would provide up to $2 million combined
Oh, okay.
in Simon Up. So, you know, one versus multiple, you know,
Yeah,
limits is what
okay,
it comes down to.
okay. And then on that last one, I mean, is this like where you go out and hire some public relations firm or something like that to calm everybody down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
You'd be surprised how fast this stuff carries
Yeah.
out, gets out of control like wildfire. So, yeah, there's a lot, they provide some resources there to help, you know, talk you through what to do, what steps to take, so.
You really think that'd be an issue at Lake Lemon, honestly?
No.
So the overall premium on this is $11.50 or
1400.
Yeah. And it is based, I mean, we derive it in how they measure the exposure, as they look at kind of, you know, the revenues, which we kind of look at being the dredging budget. So we estimate that at $120,000. So again, I know there's a lot of conversations about, you know, doing a lot of big things in dredging. And obviously, if that exposure goes up and such, then, you know, the premium could do that as well. But based on what you're doing today, you know, that, you know, is what the premium would be.
Yeah, and I do like that as, since we are looking at cleaning out the disposal sites, we are trucking dirt, we are increasing exposure. I really do for the minimal deductible, it's quite a bit of coverage.
And then at the point that we get to contracting out larger work, I would presume that we would have insurance requirements on our contractors
Absolutely.
to ensure that it's on their dime as far as some of the additional
Yeah, that, you know, that's very critical and something we could definitely work together on is, you know, doing contract reviews, because you definitely want any subs that you use to, Haven Conservancy has additional insured, waiver, subrogation, and especially probably with the work too, not only make sure that they're carrying a general liability, but, you know, pollution, et cetera, you know, to protect the lake in the event that something happened.
And currently, all of our subs, we do require $1 million per occurrence liability with us and City of Bloomington Utilities named as additional assured. But if we are getting into potentially $3 million projects, then
Dredging and digging up there, yeah.
Does this, not having been here last time, does this information helpful satisfy the
I think
questions
what-
that y'all had?
Yeah.
It's very helpful.
Yes, what
Thank you.
confused me was every time we looked at a page, this endorsement changes the policy.
Yes.
Please read it carefully, and it was like, it was every page said that, and so nobody was able to explain it like you did, so.
And we're real good about doing that.
Okay.
I'm good.
I think understanding the real life examples of where we would need it
Yeah.
is actually helpful. We were just looking at pages ad nauseum of that, you know, so thank you.
Was it-
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I move we approve it.
All right. Would you like to make that motion, Debbie?
I move that we approve the purchase of the pollution liability coverage.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve, purchase this pollution liability coverage at $1,400 per year. All those any more other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thanks, Lance, for your time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Lance.
That probably took us less time than last time.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Managers report. Sorry, I almost skipped Lance.
This is mostly just agreements that we have. First up, we have a professional service agreement with Ken Mullis. We actually utilize Ken when we do our debris removal. Every spring, he actually has some trucks with grapple hooks, and he'll actually haul out our debris that we pick up. He hasn't raised the price on us in probably over a decade since we've been using them. So I would, if there's no questions, recommend the approval of the professional service agreement with Ken Mullis for $250 a truckload and then a one-time $75 insurance fee.
I would make that motion, Adam.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Ken Mullis Lake Debris Removal quote. Any other discussion? Questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good.
Does he load all
Motion
of that,
carried.
right?
Motion carried.
Yeah, yeah.
about it.
We rent a skid steer and we'll kind of pile by the causeway and he comes and grapples it and hauls it all out, so pretty good deal, honestly. Next up, we have our stone hauling agreement quote. We bid this out every year just to kind of lock in the cost. Primarily, we use it for riprap. Occasionally, we'll use some of the other stone for access roads and the disposal site around the park. We do have 3 quotes in from Naylor Trucking, Young Trucking, and A+ Performance. Naylor was actually the lowest on all the types of stone except for graded riprap. We do not use graded riprap. We use the Gabion riprap for our riprapping that we do for the shoreline stabilization. With the cost of everything else being lower, and actually with having a good relationship with Naylor in the past as far as reliability, being able to get trucks to us when we need them. So I would recommend the approval of the stone hauling agreement utilizing Naylor Trucking at their quote sheet.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Naylor stone hauling agreement quote. Any questions or further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Adam, before you do this, we'll hear from the board first on the fireworks date discussion, and then I want to hear from the public about your thoughts if they are in agreement or differ with ours. So.
Yes,
So
so
go
we
ahead.
have the
I'm sorry.
professional services agreement with Heath Heddy and Bill Hawkins, who've done our fireworks show for the past 2 years. Their quote is, well, $6,500 is what we tell them we'll spend each year.
Okay.
Every time I talk to them, they try to get it up a little bit.
Sure. Actually, I guess I have this on my agenda. Did it get changed as just the discussion of the actual date?
Yeah, the skates, well, in the,
versus the contract.
along with that discussion,
Okay.
I've actually, when I've talked with them, July 4th, they're booked up. And then actually later on in the week they also do Paoli. They're actually doing 4 wins this year out on Lake Monroe, but they were available on the 5th. So they would not be available on the 4th. They'd have to go with a different company, one of the older companies.
Okay.
But they were available on the 5th, the Friday, which I think is.
And the rain date would be the 6th?
Yes.
Is that what
Yeah.
I'm remembering? Okay. Board, what do you think?
We never actually do it on the 4th anyway. I mean, we always do it on one side or the other. I think Fridays, I like that. I think
Especially since it's a Friday, you know, it's just part of a long weekend.
Yeah.
I would move that we have a fireworks display on July 5th.
All right, because I promised him, does anybody have another thought? The Dugan family just doesn't like to have to go to work the day after the fireworks, so this would accommodate those folks.
Friday night is good.
So,
that
all
applies
right.
to a lot of people, I'm sure.
Exactly. Okay, a motion has been made to go with the current company, July 5th, and 6th as the rain date.
I second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now the cost, right? What'd you say, $6,500?
6,500 is in the contract. The reason the 4th gets set off is because a lot of these other companies are paying a lot more money for that. They're always trying to get me as close to 10,000 as they can, and they swear it'll be double the show for that price because they have to lot into the insurance.
But didn't you raise more than that last year?
Yeah, last year we raised, it was.
7,400
in the office. It was over 7,500, a little
7,000.
over.
So
that was a
That we
record.
raised in donations for that.
I mean,
That was the highest I've ever seen.
Extended it, I mean, a little bit.
I'd love to, in other years past, we've gotten upwards of 8,000 in donations.
Yeah.
Really just depends on how much. And actually this year, one of the things, we can discuss it later on, that I'm thinking about is even potentially charging admission to the fireworks. Since we do get so packed, it is a very hot item for
I
people
think-
that don't live on the lake.
I've always thought that should.
That's a great idea.
And
That
we
is a good
have,
idea.
we have hundreds of cars, and I think we could make the majority of that in just access fees from non-freeholders
could.
coming in.
Well, I think that's a great, and you wouldn't have to charge them that much, I mean.
No, I think like $10 a carload or something, because you'll have every now and then somebody give you 20, and you have a dozen cars come in for $2, but we always stop payment at the gate and then do donation only, but I really think charging the fee would be,
I think that's a better approach.
and I guarantee we'll sell it out, we'll advertise in the newspapers that we have a fee. We can decide the fee later on, but I honestly would be interested to see what an 8,000 or more show would look like.
Me too. Absolutely.
Especially since, I mean, even if we ended up with, say, $2,000 expense out of our own pocket that we didn't make back. I think that's pretty minimal.
See, I think the fireworks are really, really good the way they are, so I'm kind of like, let's just make the extra money on
Right.
it for the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, they really go a long time, I mean, I think they're really pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
It's never long enough, though, never. I'm kidding. You can tell we really like 4th of July.
Yeah, but like 3 years ago, they were what, like 10 minutes or something?
There was a little issue.
Well,
there.
the old company that we use, we probably got half the show for the same price. Luckily, these guys are local, so they really, besides their insurance cost, all of it goes to Shells. So they've really worked with us a lot.
Well, we could also do this, we could decide to try 1 year, going a little more, and charging, and then decide, is it worth it? I mean, how do you know unless you up it a little bit? And you can say, well, I didn't notice that much difference, or we thought that was really a lot better. Just thinking out loud. So we don't have to decide that tonight, though, we just need to approve.
Yeah, we can improve it. We would just need to let them know because they are ordering Shell soon because they try to buy them all in bulk for all the different
So
shows.
what is your recommendation?
I would recommend that we go. They keep trying to push it for 10, but I'd like to meet them halfway and see what an $8,000 show gets us. And if we're going to charge, I think we'll make more than that back in donations.
And then we reevaluate next year if we
Yeah.
want.
I'm fine with that, if that's
All
your
right.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, we need a motion?
I make a motion that we raise it to 8,000.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I only want to know if we're going to charge at the gate. I was looking back to see what we approved in December. So I don't know if we can charge one fee at the gate, you know, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it'd be a special event because in
Okay.
the past
Yeah.
we just shut down the gate and we just do donation only. So this would be a special event.
Well, at a minimum, we could charge our regular
yeah.
rate, which is
Yes,
$7 a
okay.
car.
And the park, yeah. If we did 7, the car would charge right
Wouldn't
through.
charge, yeah,
Plus the
more than
park
what we've
technically
approved.
shuts down at 8
Yeah.
o'clock.
Right.
That's a good point.
So
Okay.
really anything into the evening would be a special event. So I don't think it'd be an issue for a one-time event.
That's all I have.
Good thought.
I'm good with that.
All
Hey,
right.
Adam, would you make it the all day, so when people are coming in early and staying? Or would you just charge the $10 all day for the 4th of July?
I would think throughout the day we would have to keep the 7 and we'll have a cutoff period where after, because you can come to the park and some people
Right.
come and I hate to charge them more if they're just utilizing the park for the day.
Right.
So I would think you would charge the $7 and most of the day. At 5 o'clock we have to kick everybody out of the beach and park area at that point anyways. So
Okay,
since
so
we do
you-
close, that'd be a solid cutoff point to say, all right,
Good.
this is the special event if you're entering after 5 p.m.
Right, so people can't stay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
What if they want to stay? Could they just pay the $10 fee?
Yeah, and people can stay. I
You
mean,
know what I'm
really,
saying?
if they,
I'm here for the fireworks, I'm gonna.
yeah, if they came in early and just paid the 7, they just
They would
need to get in for
be-
7 and get a stay
It would
there.
be
yeah.
smart to just say I'm here for Riddle Point Park.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
if
saying.
they come early, it's just the 7, but that's still better than just getting potentially a couple dollar donation out of them.
Yeah.
But,
All right, well, it's been moved and seconded that we increase the firework expenditure to $8,000 for 2019 and.
and improve the contract with
and-
Keith
and-
Hetty and Bill Hawkins.
As amended.
Yes, as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did you get that that was an amended? Okay. Sorry. Okay, very good.
All right, next we have our annual board conflict of interest policy. This is mandated by the state, just for any board members to disclose any potential conflicts of interest. So we really don't need a motion to accept or a resolution or anything, we just have to do this. So I'll pass this down and I'll get it to the page for everybody to sign. Print it off, whatever.
Adam, do I need to have a reference on there that I already submit the?
On this, you would just put just your organization on the top, but you do have the separate ones for the sale of passes and for the marina. Yeah, I do have it. So on this, for the entity organization, I would just put down marina, and then that'll cover that.
Okay.
So unless you have a potential conflict, you can
Just
just sign
sign.
it. If you do have one, then you would just write it down at the top there. Well, that's going down. Up next, we have updates on the sediment management project.
Adam, what about the resolution for Lair?
Nope, I didn't even see that. It's mixed in there.
That's why you
All
have me.
right. Resolution 3/1901 We were conditionally awarded a $5,000 grant from the Lake and River Enhancement for the control of nuisance vegetation, i.e. Eurasian milfoil. It is a matching grant, so when we approve this, we do have to match it $5,000 to get the grant. That's usually not an issue since I think last year was our lowest year in a couple decades, and that was around $36,000. So I would like to go ahead and recommend a motion to accept the $5,000 matching grant from Lake and River Enhancement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the $5,000 grant, Lair grant for aquatic vegetation management. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now you can go to your sediment project.
Next, I have the sediment management report. I might switch this around a little bit. First of all, we did have a meeting with UMBA last week, and we'll be having a second one next Tuesday. It was a very beneficial meeting going through the project. We are actually having them run a couple different scenarios with the financial study. One being keeping status quo with our current type of dredging operations that we have, costs including replacement of equipment and the loss of value. And the other one being if we were to transfer potentially to a private funded dredging where we would essentially use a contractor for access dredging and funds would go towards or come from the individually affected areas. So they will be running both those types of studies. Another really big thing that came out of it is the controlled versus uncontrolled bonds. It is cumulative, so we cannot do multiple $1 million bonds and keep it at an uncontrolled bond. If we go over, he believed it was 1.3 million. He'll come out with the absolute number, but if we go over that, it is cumulative and it would come to a controlled bond, meaning it could go through the remonstrance process. If it did that, it would go up for a vote to the general public, at which point it's a majority rules vote. So if a majority voted in favor of the project, you can move forward. If a majority voted against it, it would stop the project. So it was a really good meeting, and they will be coming back on next Tuesday for an additional meeting. Then we should have a report available probably next month. Once we get this report, we will be applying the grant or the proposal to the state revolving fund, which will include our engineering report and the financial report. Those need to be in by, I think it's early July, but we'll get those in ASAP as soon as we get the financial report to start working with the state revolving fund. And they will allow us to, the cost should stay relatively the same, but once the project itself is something that they'll fund, it will allow us, while we are a potentially approved project, to do some manipulation of it so we can, with our final designs, final costs, but we would know that the project will be something that they approve. So we'll be moving forward with that once we get the financial study. The sediment transport study, Christopher Burke and their sampling staff will be coming down tomorrow. We're meeting at the office, and then we'll be going to install the equipment and do some training for potential sampling so we can do some additional sampling in-house and keep the cost down. So we are moving forward with that. That's really where we are, just kind of in the process, but everything's moving forward and looking good. Aside from that, we are working on disposal site prep. We've moved over, I'd say over half of what we put into possum trot last year. We were able to get out. Once we are ready to transition using possum trot this year, I would estimate a week to max doing disposal site prep to be able to fit everything from the chipwood channels into there. Right now we are working on the Kenny Clark site for our other, we're moving along with that. We should have everything buttoned up and on the water, I'm hoping within the second week of April. So we're moving forward on that, and we should be.
Hopefully right when it turns 80, right?
I know, yeah, so we'll be on the water hopefully in
great.
mid-April, so we're moving along pretty good as long as the weather and everything lets us work. We are packed, we have the ramp in the water, so we are charging fees. We're actually bringing a lot of money already from annual passes. We've been into the overflow and packed this entire week with crappie fishermen coming down, so the season is here and we're in full action at the park, but it's nice. I'm happy to have the action, have the weather warming up, and we're looking good there and ready to go.
It's what we do. Very good. All right.
Was there What was the status, when did we have to apply to the Army Corps of Engineers? That was a note I had from that meeting that.
I think the Army Corps is kind of is a rolling
Okay.
application. Yeah, there's no deadline since it's not a fee program. It's just an approval of it. That's really just kind of rolling.
Jumping to the back to
There's
the
a hand
financial component, one thing that might be helpful for us to have as
Oops,
we're
thank
going
you.
down that route, if it falls into a controlled project, with the voting process, with us being a conservancy district and our residency, what that looks like for a conservancy district, how that would work.
And when we have our meeting on Tuesday, I'm sure Doug has more information on that, what that looked like, so I will make sure to get that information.
That's a good question. Malcolm?
Yeah, quick question on the remonstrance. If it comes up to a vote, you said that you need a majority. Do you actually mean a plurality? Because if you put it up, if 500 ballots go out, whatever, and only 100 of them come back, do you just need a majority of that 100?
Majority of the vote.
Yeah, it would be, and I think, but the clarification on that is going to bring back to us. Doug actually had to look into that as well, so I hate to misstate what it is, but we will have that information when they come back with the report.
Very good
If it
question.
falls under the same as it does for like a municipality, it's a majority of the vote, but it'll be good to have the clarification.
It's a good question, because we
But
never know.
to remonstrate only takes 5% of 525 freeholders, isn't that correct? Okay.
Yes, it's-
That's
it's a small
25 people.
percentage. Yeah.
25 people can remonstrate, and then it goes to a vote.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's low, isn't it?
And Adam, if you could also ask for clarification on what is a voter? Is it an individual property owner? Or is it a property owner that owns 3 properties? Is that 3 votes? It's all.
Yeah, he kind of based it on freeholders, but.
I'll never, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
help
to know
clarify
what
that.
it
If
is.
we're gonna go that process, we need to know exactly how it's counted.
Yeah, we've asked him for that information.
Right.
And then once we do apply, we need to, in order to use the funds next year, we would have to close on the project by December 31st, by the end of the year, to use funds for next year. So this is gonna be pretty tight by the time we get our sediment management project in, and then trying to utilize or get our final engineering study in. That's one of the things that we'll be talking about with Shrewsbury is the final engineering cost, and if we do have to go for that $3 million at once, and we have to wait for that, do we still want to, knock out this phase 1 first, phase 2? Do we want to switch them up or try to do it at the same time? I want to talk to them. One of the concerns that I have is if we do the phase 1 and then we can't get to the phase 2 for a while, I'm really concerned about sedimentation in that East Bay with Point Eidolon, which is currently protected, which would be wide open. So I really think we have to knock them out at the same time, if not put in the catchment first and then open up the channels. But if we're going for the $3 million, then it's really not an issue. But we will have to, it'll be tight with our final engineering study and then closing out to use those funds if we want to use them in 2020.
I still don't think it would be beneficial to ask the question of Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
Okay. Lots to think about. Mary Jane, it's your turn.
Okay, Adam has talked about several of the items that we talked about at the last SPC meeting and given updates on those, so I won't go back and report on those. There were a couple of other items on the agenda. One was the update on our prospect researcher, Mark Boyata, and I had sent him a note saying we had approved his scope of service. He wrote back to me and said he and his wife have accepted new jobs at the University of Texas in Arlington, and they have moved. And I kind of knew something was going on with him because sometimes I try to contact him and he was right there, and then other times it was a long time till I'd hear from him. And he said, in his email, he said, I don't know if you still want me to do this work since I'm going to be, geographically gone. I didn't see any problem with him doing the work, and I wrote him an email back and said that. And then there was a little more exchange, and he asked when I could speak by phone. I gave him 2 or 3 different times, and I have not heard from him. So in the interest of moving this forward, I think we ought to try to find someone else to do that kind of work for us. And I was actually wondering, Debbie, if you might actually go back to Angela and ask her if she would recommend anybody. I've gone online and looked at a number of, I know there are a lot of people out there that do this kind of work, but I thought if she had another person she would refer.
I'd be happy to do that. I also don't think, I've played phone tag with people like that too, like when can you meet, and you give them the dates and things like that. I mean, I would still pursue that and see if, but we'd have to give them a deadline of when we wanted the information. I'm not entirely sure what our end product from him was gonna be either.
The one thing that I was most interested in is that he was going to give us a sense of freeholders, where freeholders give their money today and in what amounts, roughly. And that is important if we get to the point that we want to have individual discussions. We've talked about the idea of doing neighborhood meetings and house party kind of things with people to talk about giving money to the foundations. And it's just good background information to have.
I was thinking that the priority with him was gonna be looking for where our grant sources were from
he was
foundations
also-
and stuff. That would be
he was-
pretty safe.
He was also going to do that. And what I would say is, I have felt from the beginning that, I don't know how else to say this, that his heart really wasn't
Right,
in this
right,
work.
Right.
That's fair. That's fair.
And now he's got a full-time job.
Sure.
Somewhere else.
And the fact that, we had an email exchange, I gave him dates a few days ago, and I've heard nothing.
Right.
Right. I'd rather spend my energy elsewhere.
Well, the one thing that this is a little bit random, but the thing about finding out where freeholders give their money, I'm sitting here wondering, like, how's he gonna find that out? Because my tax return isn't public, it's gonna be like going to them, and I get a little bit worried because we might have some crosshairs because we don't exactly know what we're doing. So if we start calling freeholders and saying, we have to have it all lined up, like,
Well-
how was he gonna get that information? What was he gonna say to get it? You know what I mean?
No, he's not going to the freeholders to get it. He's going to look at, and I don't quite understand how it works. I've seen a couple of websites where, you can hire a prospect researcher. They use different kinds of databases to go into charitable giving. They don't go to
Right.
people's tax returns,
Right.
obviously.
Well, we can talk with Angela some more and see
Okay.
what her suggestion would be. That would be my concern about approaching anybody directly before we kind of have all our ducks in.
No, and that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
We just need another
because-
person. It
Because
sounds like.
we need somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you,
Gotcha.
Debbie, if you're willing to reach
Yeah,
out to
I'll
her, that'd
follow
be
up with
great.
Angela.
See,
That's
she's
fine.
gotta know more than
Yeah.
one of these sorts of
Right.
dogs, but.
I
that'd be
think
great.
our keen interest in him too is that he was here and his wife worked at the
Right.
foundation,
So that's
yada,
changed.
yada, yada.
And quite honestly, I believe he was in between jobs.
Yeah. Don't you
Could be.
didn't you just talk to somebody that lives on the lake that has a whole fundraising background too? Would they have a recommendation?
No, that's Jay
Oh,
Bear.
Okay.
He is not a fundraiser. He
Okay.
is a marketing
Strategist.
strategist kind of guy.
Gotcha. Okay, all right. I'll do it.
Thank you. The other thing that we spent some time on is a Lemonade Day event that the fundraising task group is working on for the 4th of July weekend. And I may let Adam chime in here and maybe Kathy as well to talk a little more about what it will be. We are going to have it so as to not disturb the activities that will already be happening at the park, they've been talking to the Boys and Girls Club about using that venue. And this particular event will be a more family-oriented, community-oriented event to get people together. And it would be billed as part of a number of events that will occur at Lake Lemon over the 4th of July weekend. Did I get it?
Pretty much. Pretty close.
So you're saying that,
that's all I've got in my
that
notes.
it would be at the grounds of the Boys and Girls Club as
Yeah.
opposed to Riddle Point?
Yeah, because the park's already gonna be pretty
Yeah.
saturated.
And
With
Boys and
people.
Girls Club, are they on board with that?
Yeah, they just want an event plan so they can see what all is going on. I talked with Jeff Baldwin, the director of Boys and Girls Club for Bloomington, and with the Camp Rock director. The grounds are free that weekend. They just want to make sure, see what's actually going on, what our plan's going to be, how we propose to do kind of security and guarding the property a little bit. So really just the next steps are getting an event plan together and then sending it to them for a final.
So I guess I've never actually been in there. What kind of facilities do they have? They have bathrooms, I assume?
Yeah, they have bathrooms, they have indoor bathrooms, and they have a bathhouse with bathrooms outside of it. Pretty decent amount of property on the grounds. And then the building itself is probably, I'd say about twice the size of this, the indoor area. It's all just
Okay.
completely open.
It's only about 3 or 4 years tall.
Is their bathroom better than ours?
It's tiny, it's small.
Les is the bathroom guy. It's gonna be
Yeah, the
big.
building's
Probably
really,
have
they
to
just
get
built
porta
that,
potties.
I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, is when they built that building, but it's a nice little area. We'll just have to, I'm not positive exactly what all we're gonna have going on, so I think we're just working on the event detail and then getting back with them.
What's the date?
Well,
We talked about Saturday, or is
Yeah,
it
you're-
Saturday?
Yeah,
So
the
our,
sixth.
our goal is to do a Lake Lemon community event that covers that weekend. So it would include lots of things. It would include the fireworks, it would include the family carnival, it would include, if I can get in touch with them, a wine and canvas kind of painting event one morning. It could be, we've talked about some other different things that might go on. We create a brochure that says, here's all the stuff that's going on this fun weekend. You can pick and choose what you would like to do. But the main thing would be this carnival where we'll have a bounce house and games and things, so you can bring your family and play for a couple hours in the afternoon.
Was that in July?
Yes, around the July 4th weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking
So
at
like that,
Saturday.
three or
we
four
would
days,
incorporate
yeah.
we
One
would
thing that-
incorporate the boat parade and fireworks and all this as part of the whole
like a
thing, so
festival.
it's kind of seen as
Yeah.
a big community
Yeah.
event through the
W-
weekend.
One thing to validate is just make sure, check with Lance to make sure that they cover a bounce house. Not all insurance.
We did talk to him about the insurance and the need for it.
He said, yeah, there would be
Okay.
an additional
An additional
event,
thing,
I
yeah.
think, yeah.
Because
Right.
I can just
know
picture
our
Lance
insurance
talking
provider-
about bounce house exposure. Yeah.
But not bounce houses, so I guess I'll have to look into
Yeah.
that.
But we'll
I'm
have
not
other
saying you
kinds of
can or
games
can't,
and
it's just
educational
something to be
booths and
cognizant of.
things like that, that people can come and bring their kids, and we'll charge a small amount for it. This will not be, we don't see this as a big fundraiser like the one in the fall is. We will hopefully make a little money, or at least cover our costs, but it's more about community building and, you know, that we think of ourselves as the Lake Lemon community. And if outside people come in, that's awesome, but it's a first step, so that we can build on it for future years.
Great idea.
Kathy, is it your theory that once you've had house guests for like 1.5 nights, you're ready to find
Yes.
some way to get them out
So by Saturday, if you've had the grandchildren there since Thursday, you're looking for something to do.
to do?
Do they have access for people to come by boat?
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
talk
there's a
about
dock
that,
there.
running like a shuttle boat or maybe, or shuttle bus so that they can park other places. I'm gonna talk to the rowing club people too, or IU people, and see if we can, you know, use some of their parking space or whatever and shuttle people over.
And there's a dock there for dropping people off. One of their qualifications though is that we can't have any water activities, no swimming, no utilizing the dock other than ingress and egress for the event, so.
Oh,
They
okay.
don't wanna drown. He said.
Well, I understand that, I guess.
Yeah.
Initially, my concern was popping it on a weekend when we're already so busy. Kathy did a good job convincing me when I was at the SBC meeting, but I do want to point out that Adam said you've got no help from the staff.
Yeah, it's gonna be
You know, I
volunteer.
mean, that's gonna, I think that is gonna be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, it's the lemonade days kind of hosted at us. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the Club of Conservancy.
But we will have more in the next couple months.
All right.
The other thing that we talked about is something that several of us on the board and other people have been talking about, and that's whether or not this board is at the point where we should be thinking about pulling the SPC pieces back into the board and creating board subcommittees to handle the task groups that have been formed in the last 2 years with the Strategic Planning Committee. Some people have felt that when they get to the board meeting, there are things that are going on that they don't really know much about, and that's in part because things happen in the SPC committee, and we come here for approval. But there's obviously in the course of the regular meetings, there's a lot of discussion that may or may not get funneled into a summary. So we agreed that we would put it on the agenda for the board this evening to start the conversation about how we might approach doing that. And so I would like to hear what everybody thinks.
So you're saying a subcommittee, but I mean, that's kind of what we got now, right? I mean,
Well,
so
but
what
we would have
be different about it?
We would have multiple subcommittees, and they'd be run by individual board members.
Okay.
And then the board meetings would change in structure so that instead of an SPC committee report, there would be a Lake Health Task Group report. There would be a fundraising and communications report. There'd be a finance planning report.
These would all be agenda items.
A parks.
Sediment management report.
Well, that's part of Lake Health.
Oh, sorry, okay.
But, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that the decision-making
Would be split.
would be in the board.
Yeah, but you're basically just splitting up the strategic planning committee into individual entities and, okay, all right.
And having board members on them, we talked about this at the retreat some, but having board members more involved in that. We have entered into and are in the midst of doing some pretty critical projects, spending an awful lot of money. We have the liability insurance, things of that nature, so it seems like the board needs involvement. And I've had people from the SBC say, I need a board representative for that, it's like, we're the voted people, and so we need to take some responsibility for that detailed work. It's so much.
And I know it's tough. We're all volunteers, and several of the board members have full-time jobs and other responsibilities. One of the things that I thought is if we do go this route, that we have 2 board members on each of the task groups. So it's not just run by one board member.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I think it's, with the SBC, it's got everything, like Debbie said, we're doing so much now that breaking it down gives more focus on the individual projects than it does just discussing everything at one meeting. I think it allows the groups to focus on just their task.
I think it brings a discussion to the public forum more too, which is pretty critical.
So how many members would be on each team or subcommittee?
Well,
Just two.
I would.
Two of us.
2
Right.
board members, but then
Plus-
I would hope that all the people who've been on the SPC
Would be on those
stay with
committees.
their task groups.
Okay.
Yes.
And over time, you could have more people, more freeholders on each subcommittee, if that made sense, than we have today. So just as an example, the Lake Health Task Group today is Frank, and Malcolm and Kevin as freeholders, and Adam, of course, is on that group. But there might be other people that would want to join that. The other thing is that I thought of, and I'm just kind of pulling stuff out of the air, we'd like to have more input from Michael relative to the park. And, but because he's on the board, there's always been this awkward,
Yeah.
well, we can't have more than 3 board
Yeah.
members at the meeting. So this would present an opportunity for people to have input in ways that they haven't. The same thing is
Play
true
to
with
their
Debbie.
strengths, yeah.
Yeah, the same thing is true with Debbie and the whole finance piece.
One downside though might be is you kind of lose that interdisciplinary thing because we're all together, you know, and maybe something's going on with finances and something recreation, go, whoa, wait a minute, you know, that's not gonna, you know, work out because, and otherwise we won't find out about that kind of stuff till later. It'd be a little bit more disjointed.
Les, I think that the one point that we brought up too, most governing boards operate in that fashion, and there is that coordination. I think you would find that there's more coordination and thinking through those things. You know, like you'd probably say, well, we better call, you know, Mike or Debbie about that. We've got this going on, you know. Nothing gets decided till we get here, but I think we're all pretty smart people and know, you know, how we should intersect and communicate. But
The
most
other-
boards operate that way.
The other thing that I would envision, as I've started to think about this in more detail, is that we would begin to have far more robust board meetings than we have today. And I mean, it won't just be Adam giving a manager's report. We would get into a lot more detail, and we would start to put things together, you know, so that it's not just, well, here we need to approve this and we need to approve that. It would be in a context with whatever committee is responsible, subcommittee.
One of the things, sort of stepping back one step, and this might be me thinking about things in a completely different manner, with the strategic planning committee, was the goal of that ultimately to create a consolidated report that basically identifies what our strategic plan is?
To create we do need a strategic
Yeah,
plan.
or was it more
Right.
nebulous as far as thinking about?
That was the intent.
Uh-huh.
That is not where we have gotten exactly.
Yeah.
But we do need that, and that will help guide us.
Well, and to add to that answer for that, Michael, so the strategic planning committee was formed at the behest of the board
Uh-huh.
at a time when most of you were here. The board was in great transition.
Sure.
And really moving from one era of leadership to another. And we were having a devil of a time. You know, the analogy I would make is, you know, when you're a little kid and you're trying to get out of the pool without a ladder, and you keep, you know, trying to get that one leg up, and you just are not quite big enough to do it. But you can see, and we needed this committee, we felt, and Mary Jane has done a fine job of leading it, to help us have some direction, to bring recommendations to us so that we could actually get something done, because we were just coming into a new phase. So just a little.
Yeah,
history.
and so yes, we sacrificed the strategy because we have this, you know, the giant elephant in the
Uh-huh.
room is sediment.
Yeah.
And that was sort of where it started.
Right.
And the creation of the other task groups has been to, you know, on the financial side and fundraising sides, it's to support the sediment management project. And then we said, well, we ought to think about upgrading the park. So we did that. And that, you know, it's like other pieces have been added on as we've gone along. I would say, no, we don't have a strategic plan at this point. But I think if we pulled things back to the board, the board could very easily create that.
Right, within those different committees, and then like come together.
Any further comment at this moment from the board? Because I would really like to open it up to you all, because let's face it, the strategic planning committee is made up of you all with a few scattered board members in, so.
Can I
wanna-
make one other comment first? You guys asked about the components of the committee and things like that, and I know we're in transition, like who would be the members. I do think it would be interesting for us to try to get someone from each district maybe. You know, it doesn't have to be a big voting thing, but cognizantly look at what skills you need on your committee and what kind of representation from around the lake you have on your committee. I think we need to kind of keep that top of mind, would be my thought.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The committee, the SPC does have representation from every district. But
Right.
if we wanted that on the subcommittees, then you're gonna have a lot more people.
Well, if you
On
go
the-
two
on the
two
committees.
board members, you got 2 districts, and you only have to get 5 other ones, you know
Well,
what I'm
that's
saying?
true.
You know, so, I mean, and then it makes it kind of a manageable
Mhm.
number too, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, it's a good
But
idea.
it's just a thought.
All right, I'm throwing it
Sorry.
back. I'm tossing the ball back. Who wants to start?
What's always worked really well for us is our pre-meetings that we have.
I'm sorry, say again?
What really works well for District 7 is the pre-meetings that we have. So we don't come in here blind. We know what's coming.
Yeah,
I mean, that works really well.
you guys are really good at that.
Yes.
Tina started it, and thanks to the group, we continue it, and we need to start it up again. Thanks, Scott, that's a great comment.
When do you have
Deep
those?
fried bacon, they'll all come.
Right.
Not just your district, everybody else.
The nice-looking man in the red hat and his beautiful wife next to him, their garage.
So you have it like a week before every one of our meetings, or you?
Yes.
it's kinda
Basically in the summer,
scheduled?
starting in May, I guess.
During the
BLTs and
summertime.
Bloody Marys.
It's a very,
It's a great tradition.
Yeah.
And it does keep you all informed. It gets some of the questions answered pre-meeting. Yes, Malcolm? He looks so worried.
When I first heard about this plan, I was initially neutral, but the more I think about it, the more reservations I have. Please take no offense at this. It took us like 25 years to get to this point, or however long the board has been in existence, and we got something that's working. Now we're going to change it. I think we ought to continue with what we're doing at least through the end of the year, so that we can keep the momentum going. We've got great momentum. And we don't have a strategic plan per se, but we've got all the pieces, not all the pieces, but most of the pieces. We've got the Shrewsbury report and all the stuff that's gonna go with Lake Health. We're getting the financial part together. We've got the Parks and Recreation part together. You know, so this is all, we are getting there. And we've got good public support, you know. It's the SPC meeting where people show up and can talk and feel open, and, you know, I think that's done a lot to kind of calm people down that were frustrated and angry, and, you know, they can come and listen, and I think it's done a lot. So I hate to see us break up something that's working, though I do agree that Michael needs to be part of the Parks and Recreation, so we can figure out how to do that. That would be good. But
Kathy, you look like you're on the edge of your chair.
I've thought about this a lot, because I think, my personal opinion is it's not a good idea to break this committee up. And the reasons that I think that is, number one is it's a very synergistic group, great communication, and we talk to each other. And if you break up into smaller committees, like it was before, there isn't gonna be that same communication necessarily, like it is where you have an open discussion. And because I know we'll come and somebody will say, oh, have you thought of this? Or have you thought of that? And I think that that collaboration is really important. And it may still happen, but not in the same way. And we always have people that aren't on the committee that come to the meetings, and they're public. So you know, on Fridays, this is a time you can come and hear what's going on and talk to people. Maybe we need to expand it so that people can come more, but I think there's a place for that kind of an open discussion that is not a formalized board meeting that's restricted by rules of order and all that sort of thing.
But see, we have no place, if us board members that aren't on SPC, we have nowhere to have that discussion with anybody about anything right now. I mean,
And so I
nobody's
don't
saying
quite
that.
understand the rules of that.
Is there no way around that?
You
Well,
can't have more than
four
three
four
people.
board members in a meeting constitutes a quorum.
But if you publicize it, and if you have it at a place, how is it any different than?
What we could do is post it both as an SPC meeting and a board meeting with the board. If we're taking in information, it technically is a board meeting, but we can say that no action of the board is anticipated.
Correct.
We would have to be judicious to ensure that we don't.
And we've done that in the past. When 4 board members would show up to a DSG, we would say no board, we would notify, we would say we have a quorum, but no board action will happen at this meeting. And we've done that. So there is a way around it, yes.
Well, the other way around it, as another idea, when I think about how this might work if we did have board subcommittees, is that the discussion that happens at the SPC meeting will happen at this meeting instead. There will be more interaction with the public, with members of the task group. It's not just going to be the board coming in, people saying, well, here's what my task group did. There'd be presentations, there would be more active, interactive discussion than we have in the board meetings today.
So you anticipate that this would get, instead of being an hour and 15 minutes, it'd be 3 hours?
Oh, gosh, no.
No,
I don't think so, but
because
I think we
just
hope
like
more people will
just like
participate.
just like at the SPC meetings, they're never more than an hour and a half.
Right, but then you have to add this part of it to it as well.
Yeah.
Well,
A lot
I
of
think
it would
there's
be-
some options to streamline some of the things we do here, and some of the things that are agenda items here
Mhm.
would get folded into the committee report.
Right.
So it may be awkward at first because we've been used to, this is the way you act in the board meeting versus this is the way we behave in the SPC meeting, but
I also think that it puts a lot of burden on Adam because he's intricately involved in all these committees. Now he's got 4 meetings or 5 meetings to go to instead of 1 when we collaborate on.
That's something we would have to navigate is
Well, yeah, well-
all these official meetings, 'cause right now we have to advertise, and the SBC meeting is a public meeting, so we have to do our 48-hour notice in advance. So it's something we'd have to navigate is if we split that up into 4 or 5 different subcommittees, how we're gonna structure that, where do we host them at? I don't think it's undoable, we just have to
There's
think
only
about
2
that.
yeah, it's just there are a
Yeah,
lot
there's
of
only
ways
2
to-
of us.
But if it's, the committee meetings would still have to be noticed because if it's a committee of the board, it has to be noticed.
Yeah.
And then one other thing, I guess, is the people that are on the SPC now have a lot of enthusiasm, expertise, organizational skills, and motivation, right? And most of them are not board members. And I think that that needs to be valued in a way that this is the driving engine that's made all this happen, honestly, right?
Absolutely.
Because of the people that are on this SPC committee going out and making trips to other states even and doing all these things to make this go forward. And if you take away some of that enthusiasm by saying, well, now we're gonna make it be board committees and we're not gonna, I'm not expressing this very well, but I think that you don't wanna break up that synergy. And I feel like that's what's gonna happen. Now, my part from doing the newsletter, I like having all these committees report because then I get ideas of what I'm gonna put in the next newsletter, right? But even from the perspective of our events that we're having, it touches a lot of people. And so I don't necessarily want to have to go to 4 or 5 different meetings to get the information.
You're right.
I agree too with your statement that it's a more relaxed atmosphere there. And I don't know, I kind of see it as, it does break it up and maybe that's, you can think of it as pre-work for what goes on here. I kind of like the SPC concept, and if we wanted to try to then make it more comfortable for the public, we may have to relax our rules of when these folks get to speak, because that's kind of the issue. As we're talking, somebody out there maybe has some expertise or guidance or good ideas. Well, that's what at SPC you just jump in and say, hey, here's what I think. So I don't know. I guess at this point, I think they make a good point. I'm not totally on board.
And I think we're working back toward that. I mean, I'm really so pleased, as I've said, with, we had to kind of just stop letting anybody speak, but I think we're doing it tonight, we've done it before, working back into that, so, and I'm very happy with it, as long as people are civil, you can disagree all day long, but just don't yell and scream, and you guys are doing fine with that, but,
and there is a way to, run the board meeting. I can't emphasize this enough, that we would run the board meeting differently than we run it today. And so that we could better invite people into discussions. And I think it can work.
I think
And I would like to go back, and I don't mean this, but I want to respond to one thing that you said, Kathy. Yeah, you do the newsletter, but it's the board that ought to decide what's in the newsletter. And I think there is a control issue that I think the board isn't
It's not
able
approved
to.
by anybody other than Kathy.
Well, and she sent it to Pam and me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not approved by a
And I
majority, it's not a
have to send
majority,
it
I
to
guess.
all the board
Yeah.
members, I would be happy to do that.
I guess that it isn't a majority, that's true. It's just
What
not-
does it,
And
does it matter though? I mean, as long as there's some review process.
Well, like, we get a union paper, and the secretary is the editor, but the publisher is the president of the union. So you would be the editor, and Pam would be the publisher. I mean, something like that. So that way, anything that was put in there, that the editor put in there, was approved by the publisher.
Well, and that's what I've tried to do by sending.
Right.
And I'm
And
just,
she- and
I
she's
don't.
done a great job with that.
Yes,
There's
no.
no problem with that.
Not taking
No, no.
a strike, for sure.
I think what we're trying to do is build community here and get more people engaged. I'm just kind of guessing that, I haven't seen your SBC attendance and who all comes, but it's on a work day. There's not a lot of people that, are able to come to the lake offices at 3:30 on a Friday. I think that this will allow us to tap into the expertise of not only those that are existing on that, but other people that can really, benefit the freeholders at large. We just signed major contracts. We're talking about spending all kinds of money, and we can't kind of continue, in my opinion, with, without some clear governance structure. We're gonna be issuing bonds,
You were thinking about making a comment, Frank?
Yes, ma'am. I'm generally in favor of going in this direction. However, the board has three large challenges that they need to seriously consider. When the strategic planning committee was first organized, my original comments to you, Pam, were you need to bring in more resources to the board. You're only a group of 7. There's 500 plus freeholders, many of which are very passionate and capable of being your workhorses and getting things done. So 2 of you paired on each committee, when you think about your end results, first consideration, not only Adam and his staff are going to have additional burden, but each of you are now going to have 2 more committees to sit on, and your board meetings are going to get probably twice as long. There will be some efficiency because we're not repeating committee actions. Some of the things that Adam comments on, Mary Jane comments on, are not going to be repeated, but your board meetings are going to become twice as long. And each of you will have 2 committees to participate in. Some of those committees, like Lake Health, or whatever its terminology will probably meet 10 times a year, as the current strategic planning committee does. Whereas Les and Michael, if they're Parks and Rec, may have a fixed schedule of quarterly. But nonetheless, you're gonna have more activity that you have to recognize what you're gonna commit to. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two, discuss to some degree, the Indiana Open Door Law. We have worked very well around it with the Strategic Planning Committee because each of the task groups is its own little group, but it brings information back to the Strategic Planning Committee, and it's the group that then presents recommendations in accordance with the Indiana Open Door Law back to the board, who then makes the resolution. You make all these standing committees, every single meeting, as Adam pointed out, has to have a minimum 48 hours notice. Every standing committee is supposed to have a regular meeting schedule that's published on our website that says they're 10 times a year or quarterly, whatever they do. You can cancel meetings, but they're supposed to have a schedule. The meetings are supposed to be in an accessible location under Division 8 of the Indiana Open Door Law, which that limits the amount of places where we currently do, and unfortunately that's put burden on our project to make more accessibility to both facilities that we have, both Adam's office and the shelter house. So challenge number two, all of those Indiana Open Door laws that we're gonna have to deal with for all those meetings. So we say we're gonna have it on a Saturday, well, okay, so all those events have to be publicized, have to be open, you know, we have to record meeting minutes of those kind of things in some manner and be open to the public. Last is then the burden of how we're gonna spread out the group that's already working, which is great because we bring more people in, but the challenge now goes to where all these people behind me, many of which are here from District 7, we don't traditionally have a lot of activity from other districts. I don't see a problem for District 7, but now all those people, if they want to continue to be involved and come to most meetings like Steve
You're
does.
gonna be busy, Steve.
Go District 6.
Now he's got the board meetings and Lake Health and Parks and Recreation and Finance, and the list goes on and on and on. It becomes more of a challenge for the public to become informed, to be active, and to participate in the whole process. And I don't disagree with the process. We need to move from being a homeowners association to running like a business. I've said that many times also. So I see that, but there's at least 3 challenges there for the board to consider in the future and make it as smooth and streamlined as you go forward.
What I would hope, and I agree with you, that there is, you know, the logistics of having multiple subcommittees can be messy. But if we did it the way we set board meetings, we would publish the schedule of committee meetings annually. And if we get the board meeting shifted to what it could be, then Steve won't have to come anywhere except to the board meeting. We don't mean to pick on you, Steve.
Right, roll me out.
Well, Steve, I should, for those of you who don't always make it to the SPC meetings, has been a loyal, there are several people that come frequently, but I can always count on the fact that Steve will be at the SPC meeting.
I want to take exception to the length of the meeting because I serve on a lot of boards and they operate this way, and you're in and out of board meetings in an hour and 30 minutes maybe, you know, because the work is being done at the committee level, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that they're going to go on ad nauseum. Because
per
our
our
goal
bylaws.
is to get
Per our
more
bylaws.
people from all around the lake
Right.
involved.
Our bylaws state 90 minutes, and in my opinion, most people are not listening after an hour.
No.
So I would not have any interest in
Are we pushing?
signing up for something that was a 3-hour meeting.
Oh, we're at 90.
Yeah, we're-
Something to consider too would be
We're
that.
done.
Yeah, we're at 90.
Yeah, we're at
Something to
90
consider
right now,
too would be
for example.
location and how we split these up, because during the
Yeah.
summertime, there's no way I can have 4 subcommittee meetings at the office when we're in heat of operation.
Yeah.
Well, we would have to find it.
Yeah, we
another
could,
venue.
there's some options for that, but it also may be difficult and be counterproductive, at least on my part, if we have 4 subcommittees, one day every week, I'm at a subcommittee structure. But, yeah, no, I don't think I'd make them all, but.
No.
Well, and, you know, back to Frank's point, maybe not every subgroup needs to meet every single month.
No.
And I would also say, if we're operating the way we ought to be operating, you might not need to be at every single subcommittee.
And I agree with that as well.
Let Alice go to
Anybody else from across the room? Very good thoughts. I mean, this all is kind of swimming in my head. I think my personal feeling is that this is not a bad idea, but I'm not sure we know exactly how to do it.
And it feels that way to me too.
That's just a.
I think we should come up with the groups that you have in mind. A Lake Health Task Group would take care of lake health and sediment management. Finance would take care of money. Fundraising, obviously, and the media, things like that. I mean, is that, and then
And I
Parks
think
and
the last one
Recreation?
was the parks. I think
Okay.
those were the four.
So we have four
kinda
task
thinking about.
groups that we would divvy out.
And so we'd each just be serving on one,
Yeah, okay.
because we've got
Maybe
8 people
two.
counting.
We would have.
Well, I was looking to
why don't we
combine two, and then you only have two task groups, and I was just looking to see if there would be a way, instead of having 4 meetings, you only have 2 meetings, just seeing if there was a way to maybe streamline it a little bit. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. One thing I could offer to do is to lay out the
Groups.
task groups that we have today, and then if we think we need more, you know,
As a
we
starting
can do
point.
that. But as a starting point, lay out the task groups and who's on them today. And then the other thing I would like to take a crack at, and Debbie, maybe you and I could do this together, is to do like a straw man agenda for what the board meetings would look like based on having subcommittees.
How come you didn't ask me?
No.
I'd be happy to do it, but Debbie.
Well, I know what you were gonna ask, but I do
resonated.
think that we need, most boards, the committee, it needs to be, here's the responsibilities of this group, you know, and it's not a big, long thing, a paragraph, it's a charter for your committee, what you're responsible for, if it's looking at the monthly financials, if it's approving the voucher, I mean, some of those things are under that umbrella, you know, the bonds, you know.
And that reminds me of something else. One of the things that we had talked about a long time ago, I think it was when John was still on the board, the idea of having, and I can't remember the term, where you condense your normal run-of-the-mill business and you do one vote.
It's a consent agenda.
Yes, the consent agenda.
I'd forgotten that. Yep, you're right.
That would be a way to take care of things like minutes and.
Out of the scope of the.
Yeah.
the
So that
task
the
groups.
majority of the time of the meeting can be focused on our biggest priorities.
Yeah.
You can really break it down too,
Why don't you
and
read that up again?
you can do work behind the scenes, get work done, but say you have a quarterly or 3 times a year where the subcommittees actually get together, and then that's where they come up with their official recommendations to the board. So you can still kind of work within your groups, like we do work separately, but if we came back, you know, once every quarterly and then said, all right, here's our official recommendations, then it's on record.
You gotta be very careful. Right now, we have the luxury that the 4 of us can have conference calls and do all those kind of things. While we, as a committee, could have a conference call, it would have to be in the mission statement that conference calls of the committee cannot have an action and cannot even make a recommendation. They can only have discussion, because that's the way the open door law is regulated. You have to allow the public at a pre-advertised, normally kind of scheduled meeting in order to have a vote or present a recommendation that would then go forward to the board. So-
I just feel like this, having come onto the board a year ago, I really was struggling, looking for governance documents, things of that nature, because I just felt like we had all this, you know, the reason for Indiana, you know, open door laws and everything is because we are a governmental entity, so I feel like we need this level of transparency. That's really what's calling for it. But what we did was circumvent that, in my opinion, by kind of running all these things, you know, outside of the board and having these discussions, like you're saying, where, you know, at least for me, and I'll just speak for myself, you're just kind of clueless about what's going on. Thus, we come to these meetings and I'm asking a lot of questions and they're drawing on and, So I think it's all about being transparent with all of our freeholders and trying to be more inclusive and have the diverse opinions that we need at the table to make good decisions.
I do take a little exception to us trying to circumvent.
Well, it came
because
across that way. Yeah.
It
That was
wasn't
never the
intended
intent, but-
to, and we weren't getting anything accomplished.
Right.
So I
right,
have
right.
to say.
So
and
we had to kind of go
we
around
had
the
to
system
do
to get
something.
it done. I get
Well,
that.
I don't think we.
I don't think
I
we disagree
apologize,
with
I
that.
didn't mean that.
We didn't go around it, but we worked within
I want
it.
to totally disagree
Right.
with that statement, Deborah. And we did not go around the system at all. We worked within the rules of the system.
Right.
The task group evaluated proposals at length and had a discussion by conference call, as an example, when we just hired Christopher Burke. And that teleconference call was 1 hour and 15 minutes. However, then we presented that information in a summary that took maybe 10 or 15 minutes to the Strategic Planning Committee, because it was all focused on what it was. That was the advertised public meeting. And then that group had discussion on it. And then presented the consensus recommendation to bring that action to hire Christopher Burke to the board, who then acted on it. So we worked exactly within the system. There was no circumventing the system at all.
I'm just used to a different format. I'm used to having people make the proposals to the committee, being able to ask questions as a board member, at those points and not have the decision come to me. And this is kind of you lose out on that middle ground rationale and reasoning sometimes, in the opportunity to gather the information you think you need to vote appropriately. But we
But
can
if
let
you're
go
not
of
on that committee, then you're kind of in the same boat, right?
Well,
You know?
except that what would happen in the board meetings is that part of what gets has been, and I hate to say traditionally because it's only been 2 years, but what traditionally happens in the SPC meeting is a somewhat more robust discussion of each thing. And by the time we get to the board meeting, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's watered down, but it's summarized in a way that there isn't a lot of room for the discussion that this group should be having.
You said that better than what I did, thank you.
But then I see these meetings though as becoming much longer though, because then we're gonna have all that discussion here,
Yeah,
where
but
otherwise it happens in this pre-work. You know?
Well, I think though, I guess I also think that not at every single meeting, at every single board meeting, we're not gonna talk about we're not gonna go in depth. Sometimes it will just be, hey, the Parks Group is continuing to work on blah, 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 and our target date is August for a report, and that we would have more order in scheduling some of those things. Before we get farther, and this isn't really, this is a little off the current topic, I want to go back to something that Kathy said, because no matter where we go at this point, I agree with her that we do not want to decrease our ability to have collaboration and interaction with with the board certainly, and with as many of our freeholders as are interested in participating. We need to keep that in the backs of our minds.
I mean, I'm certainly open to hearing a more vetted, more straw dog or whatever you were referring to.
Straw man.
Straw man, okay. One of my board members calls him the straw dog. I'm not sure where maybe it's a Wabash thing, I don't know. But, so, I mean, I'm certainly open to that. But one of the things that I guess my personal preference would be is see the Strategic Planning Committee sort of get to the point where we have a proposed strategic plan. And then to me, that would be the logical time then to create the committees that help carry out the plan.
So you don't
So-
think, how does your board work? You don't think
We-
your
we-
board
we-
doesn't create the
we
strategic
ought know
plan?
and honestly, that's a management
staff, a
decision that
management.
is presented and the board is involved in at key points. But it's actually done more administratively. Now,
So-
we're a much larger department too, but our board has one committee, finance committee, that reviews the finances. The rest of it, they will have special committees if they need so, but very seldom do they.
So what would a strategic plan look like?
To
Would it
me-
look like the district plan?
No. To me, a strategic plan is looking at what our resources are, looking at where are we today, what is our vision for 5 years, 10 years down the road, and then how do we get there? The steps to get there, and some financial estimates as to what that involves. But then we have something, and then once you have those, you get more concrete to identify exactly how do you implement those bigger overarching goals. But it's an agreed upon plan as to what are the priorities of the Conservancy District. And right now, I think the overarching consensus is obviously sedimentation. And I think there's wide agreement that is our top priority. But you know, where does everything else fall into that priority list, and what are we willing to do, and what expenditures are we willing to make or not make over a time frame to get there? So I'm certainly open to discussion. I wouldn't be able to make a decision
And
today.
as we change our scope and we figure this out too, we may have to go back and reevaluate the district plan to get that. I mean, that would need to be, if we're broadening the picture and the scope of the Conservancy District, that would have to go to the court and we
Yes.
have to amend our district plan. Because right now, we're essentially, the district plan is water quality, recreation.
Yep.
Yeah, and to me, the strategic plan is a different document than the district plan. We've got two mandates per the district plan and how we were formed as a district. The strategic plan tells us how we successfully, execute those mandates, but gives us specific.
In a way, Adam's goals for the year might do that.
Kathy?
I am, as you obviously figured out, big on communication is important to me, right? So that's why I proposed the idea of the newsletter, and I think that my goal with that and with the SBC is to try and get more news out and get more people bringing news in, if you will. I feel like in the past, we did the board meetings, but that was all, and not very many people read those, frankly. Not very many people go online and listen to the podcast, they just don't. So my goal with the newsletter is to try and make it more user-friendly, but also anybody that has something that they want to submit in there, all they have to do is say, hey, we want this. And so I have tried to solicit from these different groups, give me an article, give me a report. And I think we're getting to that place where our sprinklers are getting more, they're learning more of what's going on, and it's a growing process. But I think that this is an essential part of that. And I think it's gonna take more than just what we talked about tonight, maybe to get out. But I think we need to keep pushing on that communication to get everybody informed, because then they feel like, oh, I'm a part of this, and I can be a part of this. But it's a multi-step process.
I think you might have missed your calling as a teacher or a camp counselor, or you are very good at that. It's appreciated. Well, as the hour
Maybe we
is
need to
late,
table this for now.
I was gonna say, as the hour is late, and this is your section. Are you?
I'm done.
ready to bring back to straw
I'm done.
dogs?
So
I just want to say something
I-
in response to what you said, Mike. I think that usually you work in an organization and there's a whole lot of employees, and I'm sure you have a lot. How many do you guys have in your?
We have 64 full-time and over 600 total.
Okay, so usually it's the staff. I mean, this is a bit more of a volunteer board where we don't have the staff, so we're all having to work. So, to my way of thinking, we have to, clearly Adam makes recommendations, you know, to us, and he has a lot to say about the strategic plan and everything, but I think to expect him to like sit down and do that would be bad. And I think that if we went to these like 4 committees, like Parks and Rec could say, well, we would love it if eventually we could have an event space out there. We would like to get some more playground equipment. We would like to attract people. And then it's like you said, it's like, these are what we want to accomplish, short term, long term, and here's the resources, and it helps the board direct the resources. So just like Lake Health would have those, you know, and, you know, finance supports that, and, you know, development would do that. So I think actually it could come together in a board retreat format, maybe even, you know, or that's where I've seen it mostly done, focus groups and,
As have
you
I.
know. Oh, and you used to do that a lot, didn't you? Did you do that? Isn't that what you do?
Well, I helped people do that, yes.
Oh, cool, there you go.
But it has, I don't think that's the purview of the strategic planning committee, or that's not how it's played out,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
in this case, the board needs to weigh in.
I agree.
All right.
So I would be willing
To get the straw dog?
to put the straw dog together.
Okay, and I'll be glad to help you
Okay.
any way I can. We want to conclude this for now
Yeah.
and revisit it later? I think it's some excellent points.
We lost half our audience.
Yeah, but some very good points all the way across the room, and I appreciate that.
And
and it's
we-
not an easy task we're
You know,
trying to figure out.
We said in the last SPC meeting that we were going to continue to have SPC meetings until the board made a decision on
Figured it
this.
out.
So,
Right. So let's
so we're
start-
still in business.
Yeah,
And,
okay. We will continue the process.
okay.
Public comment, any further? We're there? If not, the
Hey, I
next.
got one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
Are they going to pick up the wood if it's laying on docks, or are you gonna come get it?
Depends how big it is. If our general rule of thumb is if 2 able-bodied men can do it, we'll leave it up to the homeowners. If it's big logs and stuff floating out, we'll come grab it. That probably won't be until early May though.
I just tell these people that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it probably won't be until early May until we get it
Yeah,
coming
but you
on.
can go outside.
We will probably organize a lake volunteer event for Saturday, May 4th in the morning, and then pull out the small stuff, drag the medium stuff to shorelines,
Yeah.
and milk jug the big stuff, and then early May, you guys.
And we'll get out stuff that we can drag with the pontoon boat, we will. On top of that though, if you are doing some volunteer stuff, anything big, like if you guys can drag it to the disposal site, we can grab it there and we'll put it in there, so.
All right, I was just so I can tell them what's gonna, because I know they haven't come down yet.
All right.
Because they've got giant logs laying there.
You'd probably save me a phone call if you're able to tell him.
Probably.
Thank you. Malcolm, you
We
had
got a
something?
flock of pelicans visiting us on the east end of the lake.
Is that what they are?
Is that what they are?
Pelicans?
I got those are giant.
I've never seen a pelican at Lake
Oh, you gotta
Lynn.
send those pictures.
Have you seen them?
Everyone's been asking where they are.
In the newsletter.
It's on next door Lake Lemon.
Are you taking pictures of the newsletter?
Yeah, you're on that.
Are they, maybe they're en route?
Climate
Oh, there you go. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen them. That's crazy.
Somebody put on
They're
their
all on the east
own.
end.
Last year it was the swans. Now we got pelicans.
They got 2 swans down there.
What's gonna happen next? Oh, they've been busy.
We adjourned the meeting. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, next meeting is April the 24th? 5th, thank you. A motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you. Thanks for coming. Drive safe.
Aye.
Aye, aye. Har, har. Yeah, you can,
Yeah, that's strategic plan. There's
Uh-huh.
staffing needs as we go forward.
hang on one second.
With us, I know that that's